Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. God willing, today we will be reading from Surah 8, verse 14. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Surah 8, Spoils of War, Al-Anfal, verse 14. This is to punish the disbelievers. They have incurred the retribution of hell. O you who believe, if you encounter the disbelievers who have mobilized against you, do not turn back and flee. Anyone who turns back on that day, except to carry out a battle plan or to join his group, has incurred wrath from God, and his abode is hell. What a miserable destiny. So these verses are talking about lessons from history, as we read at the last study. And God, is letting us know that He supports the believers. And when the disbelievers and the believers are in confrontation with each other in a battle, we have the example in history where God supported the believers, and God inspired them, that God inspired the angels that I'm with you, so support those who believed. I will throw terror in the hearts of those who disbelieved. You may strike them above the necks, and you may strike even every finger. So, and God says this is what they had justly incurred. So these verses basically show that if there are believers that are in battle with the disbelievers, God will always support the believers. And this is because the believers, they're righteous and they trust in God, and because God is their Lord, right? And so what does it show to us when we see the so-called Muslims being oppressed all the time and being defeated and persecuted, and they have no support from God, and that shows that obviously they're doing something wrong, and obviously God is not supporting them because of that, and they only suffer from humiliation and oppression and defeat and loss, right? But God guarantees victory for the believers, and God allows the disbelievers to be humiliated in this way and lose if they're faced in a battle with the believers. And we have lessons from history to prove where the odds were against them, and they were largely outnumbered by the army of the disbelievers. But the disbelievers still lost, and this is God's power, because He says that because He's the Lord of the universes, right? He's the Lord of the heavens and the earth. He controls each and every single thing, including the hearts of the disbelievers. So He throws terror in the hearts of the disbelievers, and obviously, they panic and they do things that backfire against them. Verse 17. God is doing everything. It is not you who kill them. God is the one who killed them. It was not you who threw when you threw. God is the one who threw. But He thus gives the believers a chance to earn a lot of credit. God is here omniscient. And the footnote says, believing in God necessitates believing in His qualities, one of which is that He is doing everything. Without knowing God, there is no belief. 23:84 through 90. Bad things are incurred by us and executed by Satan in accordance with God's laws. 478 through 79 and 42:30. And then, so, this is a very important verse, and this really shows to us how God is running everything. And as a footnote says, you can't believe in God without believing who he is, right? If you think that God cannot control everything, for example, right, you're not a believer in God. So you can't say I believe in God while you're not believing in God's qualities, right? And then we are being reminded in the footnote as well that bad things are incurred by us, executed by Satan in accordance with God's laws. So, in other words, even the bad things that happen, they're not executed by God, because nothing bad comes from God. They're executed by Satan as a consequence of what the people deserve. Satan executes the bad things, inflicts them with misery, etc. And but even all of that is in accordance with God's will, right? So when bad things happen in our lives or around us, or even just to test us, whether we believe in God or not, when we become angry or agitated or upset, to the point that we start losing our composure, we're angry, we're unhappy, at that point, we're exposing a part of us that is not acting in accordance with God's will, and it shows that we have a weak belief, right? Because when you respond like that, you're not actually submitting, you're actually objecting to what God is doing, and you're getting upset and showing that you are not happy with what God is doing. But as a submitter, it is difficult to put yourself in that mindset, right? But to understand that God is allowing stuff to happen, shows to, even if it's a bad thing, you need to understand, okay, God is letting it happen. There's got to be a reason for it. There's got to be something that, because of which this has happened. And we have to look in the positive light. If it's a bad thing that, you might have done, it's a consequence of that. So instead of getting upset and angry and things like that and start yelling or something, at the, perceived source, let's say somebody cuts you off. This actually just recently happened to me. But let's say somebody just recently cuts you off or something like that, you have to tell yourself, you have to remind yourself that God is doing everything, instead of losing your temper and getting upset, first of all, as we know, the messenger also clarified it, as a believer, you have no business losing your temper, right? So there's no justification for you losing your temper, getting upset, and then blaming it on the person, who started it or something like that. You have to understand that God is running everything, and you have no business getting angry or upset. You're not supposed to act that way as a submitter, right? And obviously, most people, or a lot of people, will fail at that, unless they're really blessed by God to keep themselves in a position where they can act in a graceful manner and understand, not just by lip service, but by action, and prove it that God is doing everything, and be happy and cheerful and submit, and be patient. And so sometimes it may be difficult, but we have to practice it, and we have to ask God to help us, to make us better and make us stronger. Obviously, God says, patience and forgiveness reflects a true strength of character, right? So patience is part of that. When things are not going our way, and we have to be patient, we have to be steadfast. And so those things will not come to you naturally unless you believe that God is doing everything. And it's a test for you, part of your admission tests, especially to worship God under all circumstances, is that you're not the kind of person who's a fair weather friend, who only worships God when things are going their way, and when things are not going their way, God says, they turn an about face and start objecting and start getting angry. And then that's what God says, so he worships what's more apt to harm him than benefit him. And so that is the case when you believe that anything other than God can harm you or benefit you. You're actually, making the source of whatever is happening to a person. Let's say somebody cut you off, and you're thinking, no, this person cut me off, this person did this person did that, and you're getting more and more angry and agitated in yourself about that person, right? But you have to understand, you have to separate the things in your mind and understand that no, it's not the person that did it. God allowed it to happen because of something I did, or because it's a test, or because whatever it is, right? But God is doing everything. And if I object at that point and get upset and lose my composure, etc., I'm proving that I don't believe that God is doing everything. And that is a source of unhappiness for a lot of people, right? They get in that mode and then they start complaining and complaining. They get, like as the messenger of the covenant said, you get into a rut of complaining, and you complain when things are good, and you even complain when things are bad, but you also complain when things are good, so, and you get in a rut of complaining, you get in this cycle, and you see a lot of people are stuck in that cycle, even when things are good, they find a reason, something that makes them unhappy, and complain about that. So on the opposite side, what we should be doing is, even when things are not looking favorable, we should find opportunities or things that we could thank God for, we could appreciate, and put ourselves on the other side, right? And obviously, what happens when you don't do that, and you get upset, etc., or you get despaired, things like that, obviously, shows that you're not believing in God, obviously, and Satan claims, and then it's like a, downhill thing for you after that, right? So we have to stay away from that. Verse 18 says, additionally, God thus nullifies the schemes of the disbelievers. You sought victory, O disbelievers, and victory did come. It belonged to the believers. If you refrain from aggression, it would be better for you. But if you return, so will we. Your armies will never help you, no matter how great, for God is on the side of the believers. SubhanAllah. O you who believe, obey God and His messenger, and do not disregard Him while you hear. So we see from this verse that God is reiterating to us that, and by addressing directly to the disbelievers, that victory, they sought victory, they wanted victory, and God says victory came, but it didn't come for the disbelievers, it's coming for the believers. And God says that these people will be defeated, and if they refrain from fighting the believers, it would be better for them. And if they did, no matter how great their armies were, God says they will be defeated, right? And we have examples. For example, we have examples of Moses and how great the armies were from Pharaoh, but what happened to them, right? There was no army as big as the army that Pharaoh had, as powerful as the army that Pharaoh had, we can tell that from the, powerful legacy that they left behind, all the buildings and, all the architecture and everything, and from reading in history. So we understand that, the size of your army doesn't matter. The amount of money you have doesn't matter. Let's say tomorrow the biggest army in the world, or something like that. Let's say, the biggest army in the world is against the believers, right? And you have to fight with them. Let's say there's 5 people and they're faced against the biggest army in the world. The biggest army in the world will not be able to defeat them, God will make the believers victorious one way or another, right? And it's really amazing that God is telling us that, but that's the power of God, because He has all the power in the world and He controls everything. And God says to obey God and His messenger, and do not be distracted while you hear. Now, obeying God and the messenger, obviously, the disbelievers think that obeying God and the messenger means that you have to obey God, meaning the Quran, and obey the messenger, meaning Muhammad, right? But that's not what it means, because the things that are attributed to Muhammad from all these other sources are lies attributed to him against his will, things that he never said or did. So if you believe something that Muhammad did, someone says Muhammad did this, and then you go start doing it, that's just ridiculous, right? For example, someone can say, Muhammad like just to give you an extreme example, right? Let's say someone says, "Oh, Muhammad, when Muhammad was nervous, he would rub, let's say, poop on his face, right?" Or say, "Oh yeah, we have to follow Muhammad because in the Quran God says follow Muhammad, so now we got to do that." No, but first you got to find out, did Muhammad actually do that even, or was Muhammad actually commanded by God to do that, right? Before you start doing it and making a fool out of yourself, right? And so this is what people have done in Islam. So-called Muslims are following lies that have been fabricated and attributed to Muhammad, and innovations that have been attributed to Muhammad, and lies attributed to God. And people are following them because they think that God wants them to follow it, right? So, but in reality, what happens is God sends his messengers with a message, consistent message that is in consistence with the Quran. Now, Muhammad was only sent to preach the Quran, the message of God, and that's all what he preached. So everything that even came out of his mouth was the Quran or explanation of him even, but just the Quran really, because he wasn't allowed to elaborate on things other than beyond what the Quran says, right? So that's all he did. Same with the messenger of the covenant. Every messenger that God sends is only going to say what God says. So obeying the messenger is obeying God. Obeying God is the same thing that the messenger is saying. So you're just obeying God basically, because the messenger is sent by God with God's message, right? It's common sense. But a lot of people cannot understand that, unfortunately. So obeying God and the messenger is important. You can't say, I obey God and I obey the messenger, and if the messenger is saying things from the Quran, I will follow them. If the messenger is saying something else, I will not follow them. Yeah, of course, if the messenger is saying something else other than the Quran, if the messenger tells you to disbelieve in God, you're not going to do that, right? But the other side of it is that a messenger will only tell you to believe in God. He's only going to tell you the truth. He's only going to tell you the righteous things to do. The messenger is not going to tell you to disobey God. The messenger is not going to fabricate lies against God. He's only going to tell you to follow what God is telling him to tell you, right? So by obeying a messenger, if you're really following his words, they're going to be in accordance with what God is saying, and you're not going to go wrong. So obeying God and messenger is, used in a way that it's together, right? So it's like the same thing basically. You're following the messenger is same as you're obeying God, because the messenger is only telling you what God is giving him as a message, right? So God willing, I'll continue reading verse 21. The disbelievers blocked out. Do not be like those who say we hear when they do not hear. The worst creatures in the sight of God are the deaf and blind who do not understand. Had God known of any good in them, he would have made them hearers. Even if he made them hearers, they would still turn away in aversion. The righteous do not really die. O you who believe, you shall respond to God and to the messenger when he invites you to what gives you life. You should know that God is closer to you than your heart, and that before him you will be summoned. So the footnote says, see Appendix 17, when the righteous exit their bodies, they go straight to heaven. So as it says in Appendix 17, you guys can feel free to go through it later. Appendix 17 talks about the believers when they die. Their bodies the bodies don't experience death as we know it. Death being the process where the angels come and snatch your souls, and it's a painful experience, right? But for the believers, there's no such thing. Before you experience any kind of pain, any kind of misery, angels come and invite you, take your soul out of your body, and then whatever happens to the body happens to the body. You don't experience any of it, right? So it's like you just continue on. It's just like you exited that door and you went in another dimension, and you didn't even see your death or experience it, because you, the person, was out of that dimension anyways. It's like you're watching a movie, right? And before the end happens, you just turn off the TV, right? You didn't see the ending, right? And it's kind of similar. Obviously, you might see what happened when you exit the body, but you're not going to experience any pain, any misery, anything like that. The angel will come and take you to heaven right away, right? So when it says invite you to what gives you life, means that if you follow the message, the truth, you're not going to experience death as we know it in the way that we know it, right? Your body is going to exit before you go to that painful experience. And that's a great news for all of us, to a great incentive for us to save ourselves. Many people are afraid of dying, right? Because they don't want to go through the process of death. And obviously they don't want to suffer the consequences of things that they have done. So the better thing, the intelligent alternative, as the Quran puts, for us is to strive in the cause of God, to believe, to follow the messenger and follow God, basically, and God, will take care of you and will, allow the angels to come and invite you, and it's going to be a beautiful experience for the believers, right? Verse 26. Verse 25. Beware of a retribution that may not be limited to the evildoers among you. You should know that God's retribution is severe. And the footnote says, a community that tolerates homosexuality, for example, may be hit by an earthquake. Right? I mean, this is a very powerful statement because we are being told that, a retribution that will not be limited to the evildoers. So how that works is, as it says in the example, if you tolerate homosexuality and you don't stand up against, stand up against in the sense that you don't, you go along with it, like just someone comes to you and they say, oh, I'm gay or lesbian, and I love my partner and this and that, and we're together, and then you just sit there and you just say, okay, and you smile or something, and you never said anything, you're tolerating it, right? You have to, as the messenger says in this example, particular situation, you have to try to talk them out of it. You have to let them know that this is not a disease, and this is not something you're quote unquote born with, or something that is okay. You have to let them know that this is wrong. This is not natural behavior for any creature, and that they should stop. This is evil behavior. It's abomination of the devil, and something that the devil wants you to do. It's a sinful, lustful thing. There's nothing else to it, and basically you have to let them know. You have to remind them and try to talk them out of it, in fact, right? And if you don't do things like that, you're going along with it, right? So as submitters, it's our responsibility to look out for those types of situations in life when you see things like that, to not go along with them silently, to speak out at least to some extent, so that you're not considered part of it, right? Because this is what the footnote is saying. If you tolerate homosexuality, it doesn't mean you are actually being you're actually exhibiting homosexual behavior. No, you're just tolerating it, and you get hit by an earthquake. What does a homosexual go through? He gets hit by an earthquake too, and we both go through it, right? But there's a difference. You didn't do it, but by you allowing it, you became part of it, so it came for you as well. Right, so we shouldn't be like that, and a society that allows things like that to prevail without saying anything, obviously without advocating righteousness and forbidding evil, obviously will suffer. Right, now that doesn't mean that you force your beliefs on other people. You just tell them, you just remind them, and do your part. And then whatever they want to do, of course, it's theirs. You can't say, no, this has to be stopped and I will not allow it to happen, and things like that, right? Or I'm going to go and protest on the street because you're doing it, or something like that. You can't do it here in my country, or something like that. No, People should be free to do whatever they want. If someone wants to be a homosexual, they don't have to be afraid of the government. They should do it because they're afraid of God. They should stop because they're afraid of God, right? Not because they're afraid of being arrested or being jailed or being killed, as you see in many of the so-called Islamic countries, right? So, God says that we should have extreme libertarianism as far as the government is concerned. People should not be punished, just for things that are discussed in the Quran, for example. People should have the freedom to disbelieve. If someone wants to disbelieve and wants to do things like that, go ahead. If they want to go and preach it to other people, go ahead. But let's say if it comes to my child, I have my responsibility to protect my child, so I don't want that for my child, right? But I can't go and tell them, no, you can't preach it to anybody. No, they can, if they want to. I mean, they shouldn't. You can say you shouldn't, but you can't force it on them, right? And that's the line that we have to remember not to cross, right? Because people are doing it these days. There's people that want to preach homosexuality, like transgender stuff and homosexual behavior. They want to indoctrinate it into children when they're very young. And there is freedom, so they shouldn't be doing it. We should tell them that's wrong, but we can't force it on them, right? And it's our responsibility to teach the right thing to our children. God supports the believers. 26. Remember that you used to be few and oppressed, fearing that the people may snatch you, and he granted you a secure sanctuary, supported you with his victory, and provided you with good provisions, that you may be appreciative. O you who believe, do not betray God and the messenger, and do not betray those who trust you, now that you know. So again, the subtitle says God supports the believers against the disbelievers, and we have the example of the believers, like especially at the time of Muhammad, like they were a very few people, and they could be killed, and God supported them, allowed them to immigrate, to be safe, and then allowed them to multiply their number, and then come back with perfect security and victory, right? And God gave them victory, he supported them, gave them victory, and he provided them with good provisions, that they may be appreciative, right? So that part, that they may be appreciative, that you may be appreciative, is very important. We have to appreciate God, and we have to show our appreciation by worshiping him and thanking him and being righteous. Verse 28, money and children are tests. I'm just looking at the time. You should know that your money and your children are a test, and that God possesses a great recompense. O you who believe, if you reverence God, he will enlighten you, remit your sins, and forgive you. God possesses infinite grace. So we're being reminded here that money and children are one of the things in which God tests us. Of course, God says people love the money too much, and there are times when they're tested with a situation where they may have to choose, money or God, right? Let's say it's time for Friday prayer. I mean, simple example, right? And you think that if you miss your Friday prayer, you earn an extra, X amount of money, and you decide that you're gonna actually do that instead, right? It could be anything, right? Any scenario, and you have a monetary gain somewhere, and then you have a compromise with God's law, right? Let's recently, not too long ago, we heard this example of mediating certain things. Like, let's say you presented with a contract or an offer for a job where you're supposed to help do something evil, like sell drugs, or promote homosexuality, let's say, or things like that, right? And you choose, because I'm getting paid, I don't mind helping you. I'm not the one who's doing it, but I don't mind helping you. Things like that, right? So that's a good example of someone choosing money over, doing something that's the right thing to do, and to not participate in it, right? Earlier we read verses about you just being part of it, just not even by saying anything, and now we're talking about a situation where you're actually mediating the bad deed, right? So that's even one step worse, So we have to be careful. So now, children also can be a test. People will become preoccupied with their children very easily. It's something that obviously takes a lot of attention, and it's something that involves a lot of responsibility. But we have to remember that our children cannot come before God, right? Let's say it's your Friday prayer, and you have to go and do something for your children, and you decide that you're not going to do your Friday prayer, But the right thing to do is for you and your children to observe the Friday prayer, right? And same way, you let's say you have children, and you need to feed them. They have needs, and then and then it requires money, and then you decide, I can break God's law and do illegal things and be dishonest and earn some money so I can help my kids, and forget God in the process and do wrong things, So we have to refrain from that. God protects his messenger, verse 30. The disbelievers plot and scheme to neutralize you, or kill you, or banish you. However, they plot and scheme, but so does God. God is the best schemer. When our revelations are recited to them, they say, we have heard. If we wanted to, we could have said the same things. So I think my Siri came on. Why? Okay. I'm going to read it again because I don't know if you guys heard it. When our revelations are recited to them, they say, we have heard. If we wanted to, we could have said the same things. These are no more than tales from the past. They also said, our God, if this is really the truth from you, then shower us with rocks from the sky, or pour upon us a painful retribution. However, God is not to punish them while you are in their midst. God is not to punish them while they are seeking forgiveness. Footnote for verse 30 says, God chose his final prophet Muhammad from the strongest tribe of Arabia. It was tribal law and traditions that prevented the disbelievers, by God's leave, from killing Muhammad. Similarly, it was God's will to move his messenger of the covenant from the Middle East, where he would have been killed, to the USA, where God's message can flourish and reach every corner of the globe. This is mathematically confirmed. The surah and the verse numbers. 8 plus 30 adds up to be 19, or adds up to be 38, or 19 times 2. So basically, as we can see from the footnote also, God protects us, right? If we believe in God, if we are righteous, God will protect us. Now, the messenger of the covenant was also protected up until the time he was supposed to be alive. He was not touched by anybody, and he was able to give his message very freely and fearlessly to people around the world. While there were many people that were being persecuted and were in exile and hiding and things like that, I mean, the messenger of the covenant was out there. He was very vocal about his message, telling everybody, giving them the address of the mosque, giving them the phone number, things like that to contact him. He was getting a lot of threats in the process, but he understood that God was his protector, as we can see from the footnote, and he was allowed to be safe in the United States by God allowed him to be, in the United States, where he could be protected by God, and he was protected by God, even though he was assassinated in the U.S. It was in accordance with God's will when his time was finished, And then, as we see, the righteous never die. That when the time came for him to leave this world, his body exited, his soul exited the body, and he didn't feel any pain or torture or anything like that. He just left this world, and so this shows to us also that God will always protect the believers, no matter where you are. When the time comes, it comes, right? But when you are righteous, as long as you're obeying God's laws, you will always be protected. Nobody can hurt you. Nobody can even scratch. You're not even going to get a little scratch, right? I mean, what is a scratch like? Just doing this on your finger. Nobody can even do that. It's if God doesn't allow it. So if God keeps you in His protection, rest assured that you're going to have complete protection and complete security, and we don't have to be constantly afraid and fearful and worried. I don't know if I should say this. My life will be in danger and things like that. No, you have to speak the truth. You have to be righteous, and you have to, trust in God, and God will protect you. Now, obviously, the messenger of the covenant, if anybody should be afraid, it should be him as a messenger saying all these things about God, knowing how evil let's say the Arabs are, and how they would kill him. But when he's being protected, and he knows that, and he's openly sending information all around the Middle East even. So we see he was printing out ads in newspapers, articles, things like that. He was sending it out to publicize the message, and people were furious, and they were wanting to kill him, and they were giving threats and everything. But for a long time, until his time was over, until the message was complete, God allowed the message to come out gradually and flourish around the world from the United States. Verse 34, have they not deserved God's retribution by repelling others from the sacred masjid, even though they're not the custodians thereof? The true custodians thereof are the righteous, but most of them do not know. So, we're being told here that the true custodians of the sacred masjid are the believers, right? Even though the Arabs might be there and they're cleaning it and whatnot, but the true custodians of the Kaaba, the sacred masjid, are the believers. But most of them do not know, right? So because this is for submitters, Abraham was the founder of submission. He's the one who coined the term submission, and God allowed him, inspired him to establish the sacred masjid for the believers, right? So it is for the believers, even though the Arabs or whoever it is might be in charge of cleaning or whatnot, but really it really belongs to the believers. The contact prayer salat existed before the Quran. Verse 35, their contact prayers at the shrine Kaaba were no more than a mockery and a means of repelling the people by crowding them out. Therefore suffer the retribution for your disbelief. And the footnote says, the idol worshipping leaders of corrupted Islam, Saudi Arabia, have allocated huge sums of money annually to fight God and His miracle. For example, the famous Lebanese publisher Darul Ilm Lil Malain, Knowledge for the Millions, published the Arabic version of the Miracle of the Quran in March 1983. The Saudis bought all the copies and destroyed them, right? So this is an important piece of information in history that we know what happened. And actually, I know the person the family who owned this publishing company that is mentioned here. And they confirm that this is something that actually happened, and so this shows the Arabs, how they're striving to fight God, and how they wiped out the miracle, the book about the miracle of the Quran. They obviously couldn't wipe out the miracle. The miracle is out, right? They tried, but they didn't succeed. Obviously, it's everywhere now. I mean, everywhere online. They can't do anything at this point. But they tried, and they tried to hide this miracle from and prevent it from coming out by doing things like that. But obviously, God has a plan, and God will allow His message to prevail and flourish. And it did around all corners of the world, despite how much money the Arabs got at that time, also, right? Spending their money to fight God. Those who disbelieve spend their money to repel others from the way of God. They will spend it, then it will turn into sorrow and remorse for them. Ultimately, they will be defeated, and all the disbelievers will be summoned to hell. Sorry, I think I read the other footnote, missed the other footnote, which was 835. So about the verse about the contact prayers at the shrine Kaaba were no more than a mockery and a means of repelling people by crowding them out, refers to the religious practices in Islam that came through Abraham, right? It refers to the fact that historical fact that when the Quran was revealed, all the rights and submission were already in existence, right? So the people were actually doing their contact prayers and giving the zakat charity and performing Hajj at the time when the Quran was revealed, right? Because they are followers of Abraham and they have been doing it, even though the followers of Jesus or Moses, lost those practices. Those practices were still being practiced by people in Saudi Arabia. So it was required of the Christians and the Jews, to be doing these practices too, but they lost them. But since the time of Abraham, the people in Mecca, they were doing it, and God allowed it to continue. And so so when the Quran was revealed, that is why we don't have the details of the step-by-step, steps for the contact prayers, etc. And then about spending money to fight God, this is the verse that God says, those who disbelieve spend their money to repel others from the way of God. They will spend it, then it will turn into sorrow and remorse for them. Ultimately, they will be defeated, and all disbelievers will be summoned to hell. So the disbelievers, even now, and not just the Arabs, by the way, are spending lots and lots of money to fight God's message and spreading lies about submission, spreading lies about the Quran, and we see that happening. Sometimes things we don't see, right, but they're happening in the background. And when things like that happen, you realize that they're actually spending a lot of money to fight the message, to try to fight God. Imagine God has given you money and then you're using it to fight against God, right? So obviously what's going to happen, as God says, they'll be defeated and they'll go to hell, right? End up in hell. And this money will end up into sorrow and remorse for them, right? And this is we're all going to see that. We're all going to see that in the hereafter, these people and what happened, it will be, God willing, we're not one of those people, and we can see, all these things as they're happening now, to see the end of it, right? To see the sorrow and remorse and see these people getting defeated at the end of the day. It's something that I guess the believers, it would be somewhat satisfying for the believers to watch. God will sift away the bad from the good, then pile the bad on top of each other, all in one pile, then throw it in hell. Such are the losers. So all the disbelievers are going to be gathered together and presented to hell, and they will suffer their eternal retribution, for things that they did, right? And when we see how evil these people are, what they're doing, and how they're sending others to hell, it is really justified what happens to them at the end, because God is so merciful. He sends His messengers, He sends His message, But then at the end of the day, you know, people still end up choosing Satan over God, and they end up following the wrong way. So may God protect us from all of this. May God protect us from the evil schemings of disbelievers. You know, a lot of things we see, a lot of things we don't see, you know, but angels are there, and they're always protecting and looking after the believers. And, you know, God's invisible forces are there, allowing his message to flourish and continue, and to look after the believers. So may God keep us under his protection and continue to help us and support the believers and guide them. So with this, God willing, I'll end. And if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Oops. What happened? One second. Uh-oh. I think at some point music came on, so I think people on YouTube might have been hearing some music. I hope they were able to hear me, but there was apparently music playing in the background because I had muted it. So I hope it worked. I will have to see later. Anyways, if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free.
MashaAllah, brother.
MashaAllah. Yeah, the sound was okay.
Yeah, no, for you guys it was okay, but online, on the streaming, I think...
Yes.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay online. MashaAllah.
Okay, mashallah.
MashaAllah, I have a comment to make about what you said about the messenger of the covenant, how he was protected by God and his angels in this way that he himself even mentioned, you know, that it was about the time that that blasphemous book of Salman Rushdie came out. And then he said that look at the situation, that he's in hiding and he's afraid of the people, and there's like death sentence for him. You know, people are following him, and he has to find like places to hide. But he hasn't said like even 1/10 of what I have said. And
Right.
You see that nobody can nobody can do anything about this.
Right. Yeah.
Subhanallah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and I think, like, you know, you can relate with that, right? I mean, we're saying the same things, right? We're saying worse things than we're repeating them, but still, you know, God is allowing the message to be heard, and we're not facing the brunt of it, right? Thank God. Yet we see people who, you know, are just brutally murdered for like little things, you know. So
yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because they're not protected, you know, in this sense. Because if you are protected, then nobody can touch you. And as Dr. Khalifa said that. If he made the analogy of Secret Service, and he said that like we are like kings and queens, and you know, we don't even need the Secret Service because we have the Secret Service. You know, we have giant angels with us, and you're not afraid of, you know, going out and buy, for example, apples. But a king or president cannot go out without 100 bodyguards. So yes, exactly, that's what it is. Because the cause of those people, you know, who get brutally murdered is not according to the verses of Quran and to the path of God. It's just like on some ideas of, you know, humanitarian, loving peace and stuff like that, you know, that are even not based on the verses of Quran. And then that's why they get persecuted, and then they get, you know, murdered. Of course, we know that that's also according to the will of God. That is the time of their death.
Right.
But the point is that it's in the sense that what they are doing is not for God. You know, that's what it is.
Right.
Brother, which verse did you end at?
I ended at 37, 837.
MashaAllah, mashallah. Mashallah, I have a comment to make on the footnote of verse 817 that we have here. So the verse says, it was not you who killed them. God is the one who killed them. It was not you who threw when you threw. God is the one who threw. But he thus gives the believers a chance to earn a lot of credit. God is hearer, omniscient. And the footnote says, believing in God necessitates believing in his qualities, one of which is that he's doing everything. Without knowing God, there's no belief. Bad things are incurred by us and executed by Satan in accordance with God's law. So I think personally that this verse clearly states what it is to be, a submitter. And even reaching this state of complete belief and certainty in the idea that God is doing everything takes time and persistence, and it should be in the will of God that inshallah we get to that certainty, because we are reading the verses, we are saying that we believe in these verses and we are trying to understand them better and better, but at times it happens that things happen in our life, and not that we want to do it, but sometimes we put the power in the hand of somebody other than God, and that would create a problem for us. Alhamdulillah, we get pinched, but then when we go back on the path and then we repent and then we understand that we understand the depth of the idea that we had, then we understand that we're not there yet for understanding that God is doing everything, what it really means, and believing in God means believing in qualities of God. And one of those qualities is that he's doing everything. So subhanallah, when we think about, the expanse of the universe, the seventh universe, for example, you look at the photos that the James Webb telescope has gotten, it just, the distances are just mind-numbing, and it's not that, they're just there on their own accord. God has created all of these. And then we, compared to that vast expanse of universe, we're just completely irrelevant and completely insignificant. However, our planet, which is like a very, very minute, as Dr. Rashad Khalifa puts it, a mote, in the vastness of the universe, the seventh universe, still we are, important to God. And God says that, we are closer to you than your jugular vein. So we are, I think we are still away from that deep understanding of this idea of God is doing everything, and it takes time. Inshallah, God helps us to understand more and ask Him day by day to have more knowledge about this, so that we have less. We put all the power in the hands of God, and not for anybody else. And inshallah, we get there.
Inshallah. Yeah, especially, like I remember hearing the messenger say when we're on the verge of about to object to something, it's important to remember the zikr. And it's definitely, I agree. I actually took Brother Jaffer's from some time ago. I remember he set alarms on his phone, like every hour or two, just as a reminder, which definitely helps. But yeah, inshallah, all of us, will make continue to strive and get better. Yeah, and I think earlier in the study there was Brother Suleman, some of the verses he was reading. Was talking about standing up for what's right, and it's so true. I was watching a video this morning. It was like on the Academy of Ideas, and and they brought up some studies and a lot of literature on like how human beings think, and this cites some really well-known psychiatrists, and basically everything that was said, it was like directly in line, and just further proves, I think that verse about social pressure, how it's a profound disaster, and these are people, I don't know if these psychiatrists are not from the 50s or 60s or whenever, or even before that, if they believed in God or not, but it was basically, reaffirmed, the initial issue of why we're here, and then explained into, dealing like why people deal with compliance to tyranny. It's just because they see a bunch of other people doing it, and they themselves don't even really believe in it. And that's kind of answered a question I had about like just some of the absurdity about idol worship and worshiping Jesus and all that. Like I don't even think half the people, believe. Like if you ask them to think logically, but they're only doing that just because they see everybody else, believing, but they themselves, and it's really terrible because what that does, new people that are introduced to the scene see all these people, and they actually think like this whole crowd actually believes in a concept, which when instead, they don't realize like most of these people don't even believe in it, but they're just following the majority. And that's and it hurts, like new people, or let's say that's learning something new, just to conform, and that just based on like studies and literature. But yeah, I guess it was just a good example I heard earlier about that. Just wanted to share.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
Salam
So
alaikum.
I want to say something about the patience. Brother Suleman already discussed about these things. Yeah. So we, the human being, actually, is most of the time impatient. And get upset, easily. And what we also see, we don't want to forgive easily. So Satan, using these tools, always with us also. Yeah. So attaining patience, also to give forgiveness, it's not easy. It's tough. Yeah, it's very tough. So, and that's why in God also saying, if you read the surah, 42, verses 37 to 43. So, Messenger of Covenant already explained the title, Trace of the Believer. So, just I'm reading only 42, 43 verses. Restoring to patience and forgiveness reflects a true exchange of character. And also, Surah 16, 126. And if you punish, you shall inflict an equivalent punishment. But if you resort to patience in a state of revenge, it would be better for the patient one. And 127, you shall restore to patience, and your patience is attainable only with God's help. Do not grieve over them, and do not be annoyed by their schemes. So see, the patience is important, and patience is only attainable with God's help. It's very important thing. So, even I see the submitter community also in the regular, anywhere, and people get irritated easily, get upset. Anytime you say something and they don't, if the things is not going their way, they get upset. If the understanding is not with their understanding, they get upset. So we have to be patient. We should not get upset easily, and this patience will be attainable with God's help. And for example, like say before, I was looking so many things with my only one eye. So, mashallah, when I became a submitter, now I want to see the things with both eyes, not only one eye. For example, like the conflict in the Israel and Palestine war, So I always support that time the only Palestine. Oh yeah, Israel is doing wrong. They are the one bad people. But now I am looking those things with both eyes. So I don't support like this group or that group, because both are doing bad things. Both are doing idol worship. So God allowed this to be happen. Why they are suffering? There should be a reason. So I don't support this group or that group, but I condemn from any side. If they are doing bad thing, I condemn both this side. If they are doing bad thing, I condemn this side. But I don't get upset from those things, because this is God allowed this to happen. So I don't get up. Before I used to get up. Oh my God, they are doing so many bad things with the Philistines. They cannot eat. So it's happening. If you think, if you analyze, and you can get some positive answer from God. For example, also for in my country, I know that I'm from Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is so-called third largest country, populous country as a Muslim, as a traditional Muslim, almost 170 to 180 million people live there, and 90% they claim they're so-called Muslim. But from my lifetime, what I see in Bangladesh, always the corrupted people, government is not good, always there's some government change. Nothing happens. Corruption is everywhere. And people are suffering a lot. Some people are getting rich, most of the people living the poverty, and a couple of years, and the government is so bad, but still God allowed to run this government. God allowed. Why? Because if you see, look at this one. The most of the people are idol worshippers. Most of the people are not following God. So that's why God allows this kind of government. Government. We don't deserve this good government. So now I don't upset. Before I used to upset. So now I see, oh my God, it should be happen. So God allowed this sometimes to be happen because our because we are not doing perfectly. We are not following God alone. So yeah, I think I am speaking too much. So this is I want to share.
MashaAllah, brother. And so I just wanted to make a comment about what Brother Nizam said. The brother Nazam, you're not living there anymore in that country, in Bangladesh, as we are not living in Iran, or other brothers and sisters. So we know that those governments, those countries have so many corruption in that, and that's why it was the grace of God that we have, immigrated to another country. And in that country, you have, you don't, I'm not saying that there's no corruption, but the thing is that it's controlled and it's, the prosperity of God is more, why? Because more people are trying to do the good thing than the bad thing. Inshallah, the time will come that, the victory of God comes, and more and more people come into submission, and then as we are enjoying the blessings and the beauty of submission, inshallah, the other people could also use from it. But then those countries, say Bangladesh, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, you just name them, they're so-called Islamic countries, but we know that they are corrupted Muslims, and they are following the Hadith and Sunnah, and that alone is, fabricating lies and attributing them to God, and that alone takes prosperity out of the life of people, and that alone, creates all the corruption and all the misery which is inflicted upon the people who are living in those lands. And if they do not refrain from it, that's going to be the result. But if a person is a believer, then inshallah, that person will be saved, and then that person would be able, to immigrate to another country and have a beautiful life. Or if by circumstances they are supposed to live in those countries, and if they are like submitters, still God will protect them and God will provide for them, and subhanallah, we see it around ourselves, we see it around, in our immediate family, that there are people who have believed but still are living in those countries, no matter how corrupted the system is or how miserable other people are. But those certain individuals who have believed in submission, which is the only true religion, then they have a good life because God is providing for them. And if needs be, God will provide for them the situation that they, immigrate to another country. Subhanallah. I also had a question about this verse. I mean, not so much so a question, but more like of a comment / question about verse 8:25. Beware of a retribution that may not be limited to the evildoers among you. You should know that God's retribution is severe. And we have the footnote: a community that tolerates homosexuality, for example, may be hit by an earthquake. So my question / comment is that, okay, we know that, well, homosexuality is absolutely evil and we shouldn't accept it. We shouldn't tolerate it. So we haven't accepted it. But what does it exactly mean, tolerate? For example, say that we are working in a place and we have, for example, say we have students who are homosexuals, okay? And say, should we state our positioning on homosexuality if the topic comes up, or we shouldn't say anything because, there are some certain rules and regulations that state that you shouldn't, be, what I mean, what is the word? You shouldn't be prejudiced, or you shouldn't be discriminate against people, So my question is, how should we deal with this situation if we have, for example, say we have students who are homosexuals or they have tendencies of homosexuality? Well, they're not bragging about it, but if, like, for example, a topic that comes up, should we state our position on it or not?
So first of all, excuse me. So first of all, I want to say that, especially when it comes to this subject, right, about homosexuality, like the thing is that, discrimination, when it comes to discrimination, right? I mean, you can't be held liable for discrimination if you are simply trying to talk someone out of something, right? You can they can say they were offended and this and that, but you weren't discriminating. I mean, discrimination is like, let's say there's a homosexual and he's very competent and talented, and you end up promoting another person instead of that person just because they were straight, and you didn't promote this guy because you don't like him because he's a homosexual, right? That's discrimination. Legally speaking, I mean, you can't be held liable for just telling someone, hey, I think you shouldn't be a homosexual. You know, it's not God's way, right? That's just you stating your belief, right? So if you really want to get legal about it, like, that's not discrimination. But if you get your employment gets terminated because of your belief, I mean, you have the right to express your belief, right? And I mean, you could legally stand up for it too. Like, you can say, well, this is my religion and this is what I believe, and I just simply stated my, religious views. I will not discriminate against anybody, by their gender or race or anything like that, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, but I mean, you still have to be. I guess you can still, don't do it in a foolish manner that gets blown out of proportion too, right? I mean, if the idea is you just want to help this person, you can talk to a person privately. Like, you don't have to, like, publicly, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
do it
That's
that
what I
way,
meant. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had this experience that I had a student who was homosexual. It was a girl, and she was very, very talented in learning languages. But the thing was that, she was completely messed up based on the family background that she was coming from, and even she knew that there was something wrong, but she couldn't exactly lay her finger on it because she was coming from a very strict Christian background. I don't know exactly which branch of Christianity, but the mother was like, one of these people that when she told me that, when Obama became the president, the mother said that she thought that, Dajjal had come, the Antichrist had come. So, like, one of these type of, families, completely ignorant, absolutely stupid, but she was, against all the odds. She was, very talented, very, very, knowledgeable, very studious. But then, well, obviously, because of certain things in her childhood, this was a disease which was, mentally had been created for her. But then she broke up with that girl because actually the other party broke up with her, and she was also a Christian girl, and told to my student that I think that if we are together, I'm going to go to hell, so I'm going to break it off. I think it's wrong, and so on and so forth. So she was also messed up, but she just broke it off. And I told her, my student, basically, that just focus on your studies right now. You don't need to focus on the things that you don't want to focus. And then later on down the road, you will understand. And then when she became more familiar with me and my, beliefs, she asked me. It was not me that I, wanted to impose anything on her. She said, "What is your position on this?" And I clearly stated that, God destroyed a complete, community because of it. And you have it in Bible. You have read the Bible, so you know that Sodom and Gomorrah were completely turned upside down because of homosexuality. So it's absolutely against the nature, and there is no, and obviously she was familiar with the mathematical coding of 19, and then I provided her with Quran, and she was reading Quran as well. But she was like very, in between. May God guide her, inshallah, if she is supposed to be guided. But then that was the case, that we read the verses today, and this, this idea came. But then the point was that I never said it in front of the other people. It was just like when it was like, for example, in the class, and it was like a one-on-one class, and then nobody else was present. In this sense, that as you mentioned, Brother Suleman, I didn't want to blow it out of proportion. And she was very, very, what do we call it? Very respectful and reverent toward my beliefs. It was not me that, my concern was not like losing job or anything. My concern was like because sometimes it happens that we have such students and they have these tendencies. And as the Messenger of Covenant mentioned, you should do like your best to talk them out of it. And it's not the case that we accept it. We do not accept it, and we state our position on that. But my question was that what I did, was it correct that I tried to talk sense into her, to talk out of it and say that, see, like it's against the laws of nature, it's against the commandments in the Bible, and also Quran, and it's absolutely wrong. So I just wanted to make sure whether I did the right thing or not. So it seems that inshallah I have done the right thing.
Yeah, mashallah, you answered yourself.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was more of a something that has happened. Yeah, mashallah, it was something that has happened in the past. But I was always thinking about it to see what should we do in these things. And I think that at that moment I was guided, but I never, I never. I think I shared it with Shima previously, but it was not. It was like something that it was at the back of my mind, that right now the verse came up. I was thinking about what should be our positioning on this. And I think that if we can do this, if the situation is provided for us to tell the person that, you shouldn't do this, then we should take the chance and do our best to talk them out of it, however we can. I mean, whether they get out of it or not, that's a different story altogether. But we just want to know what should be our, position, right? Inshallah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to say is that obviously, you have to be wise about it, right? For example, like as we were reading about the Middle East now, and how the messenger is talking about how he was safe. Like the messenger also said, like, when you go to the Middle East, you can disown me. It's like, because what lip service doesn't count and what's in your heart counts. So let's say you go to the Middle East and you see everybody, or Iran for that matter, or any other country where it's predominantly idol worship, but it's dangerous, for you to speak out, like actually dangerous. So you can't, and obviously you're gonna have those types of situations a lot more frequently, right? Now, in those situations, you have to. I'm not saying you don't say it to people, but the thing is, like, if you get into a situation where it's a life or death choice, and you don't have to like say no. God says that we don't have to be quiet about it, or we have to tell them, and then you end up endangering your life. So we don't have to do that either, right? So we have to do it in a way that's obviously safe, and doesn't threaten your life in
Yes,
any way,
mashallah,
in
yeah.
sense,
Yeah, mashallah.
And inshallah,
Yeah, I think you said. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say that inshallah, when the opportunity presents itself, inshallah, immigrate. I actually know someone who was persecuted by the Iran government because of submission, and they immigrated, and they had a hard time there. Inshallah, they got a higher rank, but now they are safe because the opportunity, God gave them the opportunity to immigrate. Inshallah.
Yeah. I mean, even when you immigrate, sometimes you may have to travel, right? Let's say, you have to go for Hajj, for example, for sure, once in your lifetime, or you have
Yes.
to do something else. I mean, you're going to be surrounded by these people left and right.
Yeah, surrounded by idol worshippers.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brother John, you were saying something.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think Masood set a really great example. You know, that's a good example that people, you know, that the way to approach a situation. You know, because when you look at, I guess these people, you know, I've come across them. I mean, you see them wherever. You might have to work with one or whatever. You look at these people that really need help. You know, and the way Brother Masood had a perfect example, you know, because like if you come at them all aggressive and like radical and in their face, and you know they're probably not gonna, you know, not gonna want to listen to anything you have to say. And I mean, you see that, you know, that's how a lot of people think they have to come, you know, come at these people. But you know, and I mean, if you present the evidence too, you know, that these people have literally the highest suicide rates that transgenders, you know, there's something wrong, you know. So yeah, it was I just wanted to say that's you know, in the Quran too, you know, we're supposed to set good examples and encourage and talk them out of it.
The same goes, I think, for, you know, so we see that the idea of religion is, you know, intertwined and interlocked with, you know, many things that we do during the day in our life. Especially, you know, Shima and I, coming from like a teaching background, and by profession being, you know, teachers, then it dictates, you know, it is dictated upon us that we have to talk about lots of topics, you know, and many of those topics are, you know, intertwined and interlocked with the idea of religion. And so it's very important that when the topic comes up, I think I have learned it from my experience up to this point, that especially after submission, that we should try to provide people with the information as much as we can when the opportunity presents itself. Other than that, we shouldn't push it. You know, we should just allow the people to, you know, allow that information to sink in and allow the people to come and ask us questions. Because if we just repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, it would be like as if we are just like imposing upon them, and we don't want to do that. And as God says in Quran, you know, la ikrah fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. But the only point is that we just want to provide information for the people. And if we want to change the mind of somebody, as we are like doing right now, you know, this Quranic sessions that we have, and we are broadcasting it. If somebody comes across it, they can just sit down and listen to us if they want to listen to us. And we are telling a story. We are telling a story, and all of us are, you know, chiming in and trying to, you know, add to this story and try to give the audience our intake on the verses of Quran. And people, if they want to listen, they will listen. If they want to oppose, they will oppose. If they don't want to listen, they don't listen. We can't do anything about that. Ultimately, the guidance is you know, with God. And if somebody is supposed to be guided, they will be guided, and if not, they won't be guided. But the point is that we have to find that you know, nuanced threshold of providing information for the people against or versus, you know, imposing our ideas on people. Inshallah, God helps us on to find that on that. I mean, to find this exact threshold, so that inshallah we do not impose it on anybody. Because we have, as we have in Surah 16. I really love this verse that inshallah. Allow me to give you the number. I think it's 100. Yes, 125. Surah 16, 125. It is said how. So the subtitle is how to spread God's message. You shall invite to the path of your Lord with wisdom and kind enlightenment, and debate with them in the best possible manner. Your Lord knows best who has strayed from his path, and he knows best who are the guided ones. So this is how we should invite people, to the path of God, with wisdom and kind enlightenment. So how would that happen? In my opinion, in my humble opinion, it is that we should provide them with information, and we have to become like a sample for them. We have to become like a model for them, because as people hear about, submission or Islam, around the world, they are reminded of Al Qaeda or ISIS or, Islamic Republic, or all these, corrupted countries that they say that they are Muslims, but they are actually not Muslims, and they're corrupt people, and they're idol worshippers. So, and they are also coming from, backgrounds that they have been completely, driven away from the message of God by the Trinity and the corrupted Christianity. And then when they come to you, it should be, I think, inshallah, God aids us in this path, that we become the good model for them, so that they see that, no, this, what they were thinking was wrong. And it takes time, for them to understand that we don't mean them any harm, and the message is for their salvation, inshallah.
Yes, brother. Yeah, our job is, based on our situation, to give the message with best possible manner and with the diplomatic way. Yeah, this I'm agree with your situation. Yeah.
All right. So, are there any other comments or questions?
I had one last comment about verse 30, that God protects his messenger. And we have here that, God chose his final prophet, Muhammad, from the strongest tribe of Arabia. It was tribal laws, that traditions that prevented the disbelievers by God's leave from killing Muhammad. Similarly, it was God's will to move his messenger of the covenant from the Middle East, where he would have been killed, to the USA, where God's message can flourish and reach every corner of the globe. SubhanAllah, we see the exact thing happening to the messenger of covenant, and we have the footage, we have the videos, we have the audios, and we see that how happy he was, and how he was serious about the message, and how he answered questions, and how he, how he was knowledgeable. Obviously he was supported by the angels of God, and he had inspiration from God, subhanallah. And inshallah, we should try to follow in the path of the messengers, in this sense that if we want to give people the information, we need to be, inshallah, we need to be knowledgeable as well. And all of us, we have to improve our information about submission that we have, and we need to revisit them from time to time, because as we know, we might forget some information and some verses, and inshallah we have to work on ourselves every day, and inshallah with the aid of God, with the help of God, we would be able to, inshallah, stay on this path.
I have a question about the Arabian Peninsula. Yeah. So when I see the map, I look at the map, and I see the Jordan also under the Arabian Peninsula. Is there any chance that some of the part of Palestine also under the Arabian Peninsula? Or
Yes.
Philippines?
Yes.
Did you say Philippines?
Oh,
No.
the map, the Palestine.
No, it's Palestine. It's Palestine. Palestine.
Oh, I thought you said Philippines. I'm like, what does Philippines have to do with that?
No, Philippines is no.
I was like,
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
so that's part of
brother,
it. Yeah, yeah. That's part of it.
Huh?
That is part of it, right?
yes.
So when you look at the map, okay,
Mm-hmm.
he says that. Let me pull up the map in front of me so I can refresh my own memory. So basically, he says that on the west side, of this boundary, you have Egypt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anything between, like outside of Egypt, right, the Red Sea, right, which includes basically Saudi Arabia, Jordan, um, uh, these places, right? And then on the north, he says Turkey. So anything under Turkey, that on the borders under Turkey, right? So it starts with Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Oman, Yemen. So these countries, basically, right? So Israel I mean, Syria and Palestine are part of it, right? On the west side of Egypt is basically Israel or Palestine, right? So yeah,
So that means the Israel and Palestine, that also they include
yeah, they're
with
Arabs.
the,
They're Arabs. Yeah,
oh, they're,
yeah,
I see. Okay, okay. Sorry. Thank you, Ben.
yeah. No worries. Yeah. So I mean, if you want to get a list of countries, right, that would be Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Yemen, Jordan, Palestine. Um, yep. I don't think I missed any.
Yes. I think based on the what the messenger of covenant explained, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that whole piece of land that's coming out between Iran and Egypt, and
Mm-hmm.
Turkey on top, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there means Palestinian people also is not going to believe, right? The messenger of covenant.
Yeah, and that's why you see they're almost kind of, getting annihilated at this point. Almost, it seems, right?
Uh, but I have some, I don't know what background, total background, that some Palestinian, they accept the message. I don't know.
No, they don't. Right? How many Palestinian submitters do we know? We have Turkish submitters, we have Iranian submitters, we have submitters from so many other countries, but we don't have submitters from Palestine. I've come across a few people, but by time, it was clearly shown that they were hypocrites. I knew two Palestinians. Okay, one of them yelled at me when I stood up for against circumcision in a sermon and walked out, and another, even he left submission, right, and he became a traditional Muslim again with his family. Never commented on anything I posted about submission. One time he had an issue was when I talked about circumcision, and he was fighting to defend like really getting upset and like worked up, almost it seemed from his comment, that he was offended by it. So it's like, well, you're not even a submitter at this point, and you still are so offended by it. And this other person I knew, I thought was really kind and stuff, like wasn't exposed to me at the time, and really the way that they respond, like it exposes, like obviously, like people in Palestine are victims of oppression and all this stuff. But what's happening to them is not right in terms of the worldly sense, of course, injustice, right? But the thing is that they don't have God's support and victory because they're breaking God's law by abandoning their religion. They are idol worshippers. They abandon their religion, and to the point that they are at a point of no hope. of return, you know. And God, so then the messenger says, God has forsaken the Arabs and they're dismissed now from God's grace, right? And he says, not a single Arab is there. There's not a single Arab up until now that I see, right, from any of these countries. There was a few people before, and I can see now that I was confused about, and I can see now they're complete hypocrites, you know. And so that's why God says the Arabs are the worst in hypocrisy. So you may see a few people that are actually from these countries, and they may claim to be submitters, but it could be either two things, right? One, that they are hypocrites, or two, they could be submitters, real submitters, but you will see that they will not be actually Arabs, that there's some kind of mixture in their race, like some other blood, you know, but they just happen to be living there. They're not actually Arabs. Like, for example, a lot of people from Pakistan live in Dubai, you know, or Bangladesh, but they're submitters, you know, but they're not Arabs, right? Yeah. So they may have kids too that are submitters, but they're not Arabs.
Okay. Not the Arab.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I understood.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
There was one point that I also wanted to make about verse 35. That they have the contact prayers. Salat existed before the Quran. You know, their contact prayers. The verse says their contact prayers, Salat at the shrine Kaaba, were no more than a mockery and a means of repelling the people by crowding them out. Therefore, suffer the retribution for your disbelief. I think it was in audio 18, if I'm not mistaken, or 19, that the Messenger of the Covenant was talking about, you know, Abu Lahab, you know, the uncle of Prophet Muhammad. And it was really interesting. I didn't know this point that the messenger said that who do you think Abu Lahab was? He was a religious scholar. You know, he was like one of those imams of for leading the prayers at that time. And when Prophet Muhammad said that, you know, basically you guys are just idol worshippers and you are worshipping idols rather than God, and you're putting idols beside God, they rose up against Prophet Muhammad and also, you know, his wife, that we have it in Quran, in Surah Al-Masad. I don't remember which number it is. I think it Masad is, yes, 111 thorns, yes. And it was really interesting to me that, and it was the context of Messenger of the Covenant talking about this idea that these people who are, you know, worshiping Muhammad right now, and they are putting Muhammad next to God, Nauzubillah, they are the exact same people. If they were at the time of Prophet Muhammad, they would have absolutely persecuted Prophet Muhammad. So it doesn't make any difference. So these people who are, you know, Arabs, and they are worst in hypocrisy, are actually those people who were at the time of Prophet Muhammad, and then they were given, by the grace of God, they were given 1400 years to refrain from their idol worship. But soon after the time that Prophet Muhammad died, they reverted to idol worship, and this time they started worshiping Prophet Muhammad, and they put him next to God. So that's why they have no more chance. You know, their chance is over, and they are just doomed. They're not gonna. No more Arabs are going to, you know, believe, because their time is up.
Right. So, mashallah, yes, speaking of time being up, I think our time is up. If you guys have no comments or questions. God willing, we can conclude the study.
MashaAllah.
Mashallah. So thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all.
Assalamu alaikum.